Hello and welcome back. In this video I'm going to show you some examples of working with REST APIs and processing the data. So there's going to be 6 examples. It's really 2 examples and it's just broken into little chunks. I encourage you to think about maybe following along, but I'm not giving you data files because there's just too many data files, and so half of these are weather API and half of these are a Star Wars API. The Star Wars API would be easier for you to follow along with because there's no key. That being said, you could go get yourself a key. I showed you the API I'm going to be using, and it's very easy to go get a key if you want to go get a key. I'm not going to show you my key in this video, so more specifically, I'm going to get over here. Example 1. This isn't actually Ajax, but I'm going to, actually, it is. So, my key is going to be a variable. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the OpenWeatherMap API. So, if you want to follow along, go get yourself a key. You're going to need a key. It's very easy to get one, or you can just watch what I do. And so, in this first set of examples, this is all just going to be jQuery. So, it's all JavaScript, everything I'm going to do. And in the second example, we'll use PHP to carry out the request, which is just a different way to do it. In reality, you could do it either way. I like to use PHP for my calls because I'm better at PHP and I'm better at formatting. I'm better at creating HTML through PHP than I am through JavaScript, so I choose to use that. But in reality, you have choices. All right, so I'm going to use OpenWeatherMap, and you'll see units are going to be ridiculous. It's important to understand that these things are never as easy as they seem like, and I will implement a fix in the second example. So my first one is this weather here. So, all right, so here's my link to Ajax, jQuery. Here I've got a button with an ID of my butt. I've got a div with an ID of my div. Here's my script call, right? So this is jQuery, you see, because I've got document.ready. This is just an Ajax call. Now I say just an Ajax call. If you don't know what an Ajax call is, well, this is probably not the best place to start. I don't know, although it could be. So I'm selecting, and so I'll do the big talk on this one, and then we'll just kind of talk about what changes in the next one. So I've got a selector for my button, and I'm attaching a click event to it. So I'm saying when you click on that, I want to update, well, so this is all defining, this right here is defining a click event for that button. Here's getJSON. So this is an Ajax function in jQuery. There's several different Ajax functions, including one called Ajax, but this one is what you use to do a GET request, and if the thing that you're going to get back is going to be JSON, then getJSON will be the right call. So this is getJSON. Right here, this is the endpoint. Now I want to show you what I did here. So you see how I'm using a variable called key to represent my key? You might notice I'm on line 50. Up there on line 1 I made a variable called key, and I set it to my key. So if you're going to do this, you should just stitch your key right into that URL. Why use a variable? Why concatenate it? Well, I'm just trying to hide it from folks who are watching this. So the easiest thing to do would be to just stitch it right in there, but I didn't. In terms of the way my endpoint's structured, I've got this Q equals Bendor USA. All right, so if you're wondering what in the heck is that, where does that come from? Well, step 1 is go to the documentation, right? So here I am at Open Weather. I did how to start in 3 simple steps. It was basically like sign up, start using API. I don't know what those. That's not really 3 simple steps. It's actually 1. And here, example of using API in a call. All right, so here's that root. Here's the endpoint, and there's with the key. So that's where your key goes. I'm going to back out of here. Let's say I want to figure out how to get the current weather by city name, which is actually what I did. So I'd click here. And like I said, this documentation's excellent, and you see they're giving me the format right here. So Q is a query, and then a city name goes here, and then there's app ID, right? So I substituted that stuff in. Now in mine, you see there's that Q, Ben or USA. Just so you know, I had a heck of a time properly formatting the city and state. Like I tried to do just Bendor, but that didn't work. I had to put a USA on it. My point being, these endpoints are going to be difficult to work with. Like, they're not going to be intuitive. And that's why I use something like Postman to help me format these things. I used Postman to try and figure out how to properly format that endpoint. And then when I get that endpoint, then I just paste it in. So it is the name of the script that I'm calling with JSON. So right? Building up that endpoint, which is what the previous video was about, is where most of this work goes. And then so that's the resource. I built it up. It's got a key in there. It's got a search term and then function data. So how this works is whatever I get back from this get JSON, it's going to be JSON because that's what this function does. And I'm going to reference that JSON as this thing called data. And so I'm logging it. And then in some div, I'm printing out the data.main.temp. Now, if you're wondering what in the heck is that, well, that's working with JSON. So let's I won't talk about it anymore. Let's do it. So let's see how this works. I got to switch this to localhost because it's a AJAX request. I click, let me pop open the console because you saw it uses the console. And I click get forecast and I get 292.25. So remember on the PowerPoint where it said it's ridiculous? I think that's, I don't even know what kind of unit that is. That's like, I don't know. I've taken some physics. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's some crazy unit that no person that I'm aware of uses, right? You got Celsius, you got Fahrenheit, you got that. So whatever, that is in fact what the heck we got. So down here in the console, I expand that. You see, this is the JSON because I logged it before I printed it. And so the thing I printed out was the, so in the div, set the HTML to data.main.temp. So what is data? Well, data is a reference to that. So remember this function here is going to give me some JSON, and I refer to that JSON in the scope of this function as data. And so it's just a matter of .main.temp. What the heck does that mean? Well, best way to try to show you what that means, there's main and there's temp. So data was what I referenced the JSON, the big JSON as, and then .main.temp. Another way to kind of see that, I guess, well, I'm tempted to go Postman and put that same string in there and test it, but it's not going to work quite right because there's a variable in it. But that's what that is, and that's how you get into JSON. Dot notation, remember sometimes there can be arrays and you might need square brackets, but that's just one way to do that. So that's an example of an AJAX call, right? So fetching something from an API. You see the work is here and here, right? It's building the endpoint that gives you the thing that you want, and then it's processing that thing. So here it was a bunch of dot notation. Let's look at the next example. If you're thinking, oh my gosh, that was like nothing, and that was 7 minutes. Well, yeah, I guess it was. But the next two are just going to be additions onto that, so I spend my time explaining it the first time, and then I just talk about what's different next time. So let's do the same thing. Same request, same AJAX, but this time I want to build a form. And so instead of just searching Bend or USA, I'm going to search using a zip code. Now, and I'm also going to display the city name as well. So this is going to be practice with JSON. This is going to be practice with building an endpoint and converting units to imperial. I don't even know what imperial means until now. Imperial is what we use here in the States. I guess that's called imperial. I mean, I know metric and standard, but I guess imperial is what we call what we do for temperatures. So that weird like 292. No, I'm not sitting in an oven right now. That's just a crazy unit. So anyways, that's the background of what I am doing. So let me show you kind of how that works. So here's example 2. All right, same stuff, same form, same things. The only difference here is so I'm saying var zip is equal to the val of whatever's in zip. So one difference here is rather than just have a static thing that I'm looking for, I'm going to get that value from a text box. And so how that's different is, so you remember in the last one it was Q, which generated a search for a city. Here I'm saying zip equals zip. Well, if you're wondering how do I know that that's zip, well, I'm not just a wizard. I don't just know that. I use the documentation. So if you want to search by zip code, which is easier because forming a city and stripping out the spaces and such is not that easy. So zip equals zip. That actually seems easy to me. I actually like that one. That's my preferred. And so you see it's an example of here's how you structure the endpoint. Here's what the response looks like. So I get that. I pass it a zip. Zip equals zip. Right? I don't like writing zip equals zip. I don't like writing name equals name, but sometimes it makes sense. There's my key. And you see I said and units equals imperial. Now, if you're wondering, how did I know to do that? Trust me, it took me more than 5 minutes to figure that out. It wasn't clear based on their documentation, just because I don't know what imperial means. But I went to the Google and I said, hey, open weather map. How do I units, right, is what I put in there, because I just, and after a little searching around, I was able to figure out that the thing I'm actually looking for is imperial. Right, so this is a good example of building up a more complex endpoint, and this is where something like Postman helps. Then it's right, data is how we're going to reference what we get back. I'm logging it, and so here I'm doing data.name and data.main.temp, and I'm separating them with a hyphen, just because this form, when you, well, actually there's an easier way to do this. This one is called weather 1. Weather 2 is this form, right? So it's got a zip on it. 97702, something like that. I go get forecast. That's going to do the AJAX call. It's going to pick that out. It's going to put it into the endpoint. And I get bend 67.57. So you see that's not 300 degrees anymore. Like I said, it's the units that we use. I know people do things differently, but I do think it's weird that it came in that other format. And here I'm getting bend. Now the reason I wanted to do that is just to show you, like, just so you know it's not, well, I don't know, just to kind of try and prove it's not nonsense. So, oh man, it's warm in Ashland today. All right, so you can kind of see what this is doing. Now, let's pick through this a little bit. So part of it is the endpoint, and the other part is the JSON. So see how I'm getting the name of the city and the temperature? The name is name. And you see, that's why I just indexed straight into it as name. Whereas temp was in something called name temp. Right? Or it was main.temp. Whereas name was just name. Right? Have a look at that. Drink it in. And then look at how I did it. So data was the JSON. And you see, I just went straight for the key. And the value was Ashland. Whereas here I had to go key. Or sorry, key. It was like a key inside of a key because it was an object. Complicated, yes, but more useful. All right, that was example 2. Example 3 is a very small twist on what we did. Same AJAX, same request, but what if the request fails? Now, I don't know anything about zip codes, but I guess there's some limited supply of them or something. So it's, if you use getJSON, so it's all kind of rooted in the so there's an AJAX function which allows you to handle things a little more individually. There's a part of AJAX which I've blown off until now, so it's this callback called fail. So if the query, so when you call getJSON, it assumes that it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't do its job. It doesn't. So you have to call this .fail. So fail is the thing that gets called when the endpoint fails at bringing something back for you. So show you what that looks like. It's the same exact example all the way to here. You know how you go curly brace, parenthesis, and then a semicolon? Instead of semicolon, the semicolon's there. That's like the end of this big scope, but it's .fail. And then function, and then, so this is like what happens if this thing fails. If this thing succeeds, you get what you get. But if you want to define what happens when you fail, you have to address that separately. So it's going to log error, and it's going to say bad zip is what's going to happen here. And like I said, it doesn't do anything differently if you do 97520. Oh, oops, I did the wrong event. Let's do 90210. I only know like 5 zip codes. But what if you do like 99999? What does that do? Bad zip. Right? It's not that it's not formatted well. It's just, I guess it's not a zip code. I don't know if it's not a zip code. It seems to me like there would be zip codes for everything, but I guess there's not. Because when I sit here just pressing buttons, just making stuff up, it's like most of them are actually not valid. Now, I don't know why, but that seems to be the case. And you see, you just like any other time you allow the user to give you input and you're going to provide feedback, you do want to address that situation. So, it all depends what you get back, too. Sometimes it'll just, like, sometimes it'll fail, and some other times it might just give you 0 results or something. It depends on the API. It depends what the data looks like that you get back, and that's why it's so important to log what you're getting. so you can see what you get. Or, in reality, logging is pretty clumsy. You see I have to expand it. The formatting's not super agreeable. If I use something like Postman, that would be a better way to test these things out. All right, so that's 3 examples down. So we started off with just a static endpoint. Then we built a dynamic endpoint and did some formatting, right, to make it prettier. And then we looked at what happens when it fails. So that was just all pure JavaScript, right? JavaScript, jQuery, it's all the same thing, but that was just that. Now, there's other things you can do, other ways you can initiate those requests. So curl, CURL is what it's for, like URL as in Uniform Resource Locator. So curl is something that another way that you can initiate a request. I was going to demo it, but I don't really feel like it now. Like literally what I was going to do was open up the command prompt and do a curl on on something. If I had an endpoint, I could do a curl on that endpoint and it would give me a response. My point being, this is just another way to carry out a request. But that's command line stuff. That's not super friendly to work with. But my point is we can send curl requests using PHP, and that's a way we can send them. So as you saw how to do it using Ajax and JavaScript, now I'm going to talk about how to do that in PHP. So you can do curl requests in all kinds of languages. I'm going to use PHP because that's kind of what we do in this class. You can initiate those requests in a lot of different languages. I'm not going to cover anything except PHP. It's pretty hard to get these things set up in PHP, to be honest with you. I always go looking for an example that someone else has created. It's like establishing the connection. There's going to be options that you're going to need to set to make it work. So it's this curl_set_opt. Typically, you have to set like 5 or 6 options to make curl work for you. Now, I give you this file in the class called curl starter. It's like a template where you kind of just paste in the parts of the endpoint and modify it and make it work for you. I'm saying you should just use that. I'm not saying that I am even fit to walk you through all the options and what they mean. I kind of just copy and paste them from functional examples myself or look up what needs to be different. So I'm thinking you should just use my data file. Now, in the world of fetching data using PHP, there's other ways you can do things like file get contents, fopen. They're worse in that they're less secure and they're less efficient. Because essentially what you kind of are doing is reading a file in from an external source. And curl is the best tool you have for doing that in PHP. But there are other ways to do it. I have had to use file get contents before. And I think the reason I have to do that is sometimes I can't get curl to work for me for whatever reason. All right, so setting up a curl request is kind of difficult. All right, so I gave you this file called curl starter. What it does for you is it helps you to build up the endpoint. It breaks it into steps. The idea is you're going to substitute in your own information. It sets up the curl options for you for a generic curl. It sends the request. It checks for success or failure. So you remember back in that JavaScript example, we had to do our own kind of thing to check for it. This has success or failure built into it. It converts the payload to JSON, and it displays the JSON. That's what it does. It's going to be your job to process the JSON. But so this curl starter thing I give you looks like this. You see, it's got Weather Underground in it because in the past that has been something I've used in my classes. So you see I'm building up this URL here. So here's like my root. And you see I'm just concatenating on pieces. So I'm saying here's where you should add the key. Here's where you should add the endpoint and whatever criteria, right? You could do this all in one line or not. I don't know. Like let's say it's a Thunder endpoint. I don't know what that means, but you see what I mean? Like I'm saying you should build it up in the pieces here. More often than not, you do have a key, and so that key would go here, and then other stuff about the endpoint or the parameters would go in here. And so you see that's kind of my recipe. And so based on the different requests, I'm going to be using the Star Wars API. I'm gonna substitute my own things in here. Here's some options getting sent. Here's where I execute the curl. Here's where I look at the curl to see if it failed or closed. Or I mean if it failed or succeeded. Here is where I take the result of the curl call and I turn it into JSON. And here, this is just straight debugging. I am print-ring an array wrapped in pre-tags. So this is something that just so you can see that your thing works or not. So that's what this curl starter is. So I help you build up the endpoint. I set some basic options. I test whether it works or not. I turn it into JSON, and then I spit out the results in a format that only a developer would care about. So I gave you this. I suggest you just copy and paste it. All right, swappy 1. All right, so here's my first example that I will use in a second. All right, so I'm going to use curl starter PHP to carry out the request. So swappy, this is a Star Wars API. So here's what I did. So right here's curl start. So to do this first swappy one, I put the base. The base was HTTP, right? You see, it's the root of the call. And there's no key here. So this kind of doesn't make sense, but I'm just showing you how to build it up. So I'm searching people, and there's my search term. I'm searching for anything that has Darth in it. So root, endpoint is people, criteria is Darth. And I'm not modifying any of this stuff at all. That's just using PHP to do a curl request with some options that do work here. Now, it's entirely possible that you will have to put more options in to make an endpoint work for you. I've run into it many times. There are many APIs that I have decided not to choose because I cannot configure the options to make them work. All right, so down here, it creates that JSON. And then right here, I'm not doing anything with this. It doesn't look like I'm using it. So let's just show you what this looks like. This is not interesting. It gets interesting, though. Okay, that took forever. Let me pop open the console. Not that I expect to need it at all. Actually, I won't pop it open. So you see what I got from that. I got an array. There's two things in it. There's some next, which is empty, previous, which is empty. It gives me this thing called results. Results is an array. You see it's an indexed an array, and it's an indexed array of objects. Here's the first object. It runs from here to here. Bunch of key value pairs. Films is a key value pair where value is an array. Right? You see how we got nested arrays going on? It's not only nested arrays, it's nested objects and nested arrays and nested arrays and nested objects. I don't know if that's made any sense. I didn't even try to make that make sense, but if you're thinking, oh, this looks kind of complicated, it is. And what this is this. It's just showing you what you got back. You would never want to display this to a real user, but it at least tells you what you got back. All right. So that's how to use curl, this curl starter that I gave you. So you might need to do some more work up in here, but it'll turn it into JSON for you. You can process it like JSON, and you could even return the JSON if you wanted to some JavaScript function. All right, so that's the most basic example. I don't know if you liked it or not. Doesn't matter. The next one's going to be more interesting. So let's say I want to do the same thing as I just did. But I want to use an Ajax front end, and I want to display the results in a less absurd format. So absurd format being, the whole thing wrapped in pre-tags. So this time it's going to be more complicated. I'm going to use that same backend script to create the results of the call and carry out the call, but I want to do it with a front end this time. So my front end is called swappy2. So same form as before, but instead of called zip, it's called, well, actually there's not much going on here. So this is, document.ready function. I don't want to explain this because I explained this already. Do I even use search here? No, I don't even have a search value, so that doesn't matter. I only get rid of that. I did a bunch of copying and pasting to make this easier. So notice here, instead of get JSON, I'm doing get. So what the heck's that all about? Well, so there's get, which is how you can issue an Ajax call using the get method. So when it was get JSON, that would mean that this script returns JSON. But the thing is, this doesn't return JSON. This returns like echoes and print Rs. If this returned JSON, then it would be appropriate to do to call this get JSON, but it's not. It's just a get. The idea is I am going to process the data here. So Whatever I get back from this is going to be referred to as data. I'm going to log it, and I'm also going to put it in that div. This is kind of a weird example because it's a lot like the previous one, and I'm going to have to make it actually... I'm not sure that I'm demonstrating this the right way, but this is complicated enough that I'm not too worried about it. So you see I get this ridiculous format. That's what I mean by a ridiculous format. You know this thing fetches two things, but like, so in terms of comparing what we did previously I was just looking at that PHP file and it looked like this. But now what I'm doing is I'm fetching that PHP file using Ajax. It might not be super clear, but you can see that search button here. You can see I'm taking the results of that call and I'm sending it here. Now, like I said, I want to make this in a less ridiculous format. So if I want to make that in a less ridiculous format, I want to call a file called swappy2, right? Because you saw swappy1 gives you just like the print R wrapped in pre-tags. I'm saying I don't want to do that. I want to make this less ridiculous looking. So swappy2 does that. So swappy2 has all the same stuff all the way throughout, right? It's still searching for Darth. It still handles the does it work, does it not. It still turns it into JSON. The difference is down in here. So instead of just this weird print R when in pre-tags, right? So all the same up to here. This time, I create a variable called results, and that's this JSON encoded file, and I'm indexing into it, getting the thing called results. Now you're like, what is results? Well, how do I best illustrate that? So see, this is the JSON that it returns. So the JSON is an array, and it's key value pairs, right? And the first one is this results, and in results, oh gosh, all right, so this is kind of hard to explain. All right, so the thing we care about is results. So like count tells you how many results you got. Next and previous, those aren't even relevant unless you get over a certain amount of results. But the thing you actually wanted is called results. See that? It's an array. It's an array key. And so I say, hey, I want results, because results is the only one of those arrays that I actually care about. I don't know what you're getting out of this or what you're not, but I'm doing my best. So worthless to me, worthless to me, worthless to me. Results is the thing I actually care about. Results is an array, and it's an indexed array. So the first one is Darth Vader, and the second one is Darth Maul. You can see by the indentation that these objects here, this is Darth Vader. So you see what I mean? I only care about results. And so that's just me saying, hey, I want the results part of it. And then since it's my results are going to be an array of, I don't even know how many items are in there. Well, I know there's 2 when I do Darth, but I don't know how many I'm going to get if I put just a D in there. So I'm for eaching through it. So I'm going to say for each, and the thing that I'm iterating over is called results, which is this set of stuff here. And then inside of each one of these objects, all I care about is the name. So see that name field? So I'm saying, hey, go through. Results as key value. So key is going to be like 0 and 1. Like that's the first key in results. That's the second key in results. And then those are the values. Well, the value is actually an array, right? And then I have to kind of index into that array is the name of the game. So the keys are meaningless to me here. The values are the actual arrays themselves. And then in each one of those actual arrays, the name field is the thing I want. And that's where I get Darth Vader from. So instead of just spitting out everything, which I don't want, I'm iterating over the results, and I'm spitting out the things I want. And so now, oh my gosh, I'm all crossed up on examples. I think swappy2 now calls swappy2. I don't know, have I even opened it? I think it's over here. And reload, search. And you see now I get Darth Vader and Darth Maul. This was just debugging information. Now I love that debugging information because that tells me how to index out into it and how to get out the stuff I want. So you saw that by manipulating it over here, I got out a more reasonable set of information. Now let's just for fun, let's add one more thing to it. Like what would you care about? You see, I can do species, vehicles, starships. Those are all cool things. I'm going to do height. I don't even know what that is. Is that centimeters? Let's say I want to add a height in parentheses just to kind of make this a tiny bit more interactive. So there's the name. Let's say I'm going to do like hyphen and then break it off, concatenate, and then in here I'll do val, and the name of the key was height, I think. Is that, I don't know how to spell height. I'm not good with E's and I's and I's and E's. We'll see how it works though. So I'm just trying to make this string more complicated, because a lot of what this ends up being, oh, okay, I thought that was bad. Maybe it's bad. I don't know, are those centimeters? I don't know what they are. If you want to make them something, you go CM, right? Whatever. Now they're centimeters. I don't know, maybe they're feet. I don't know what they are. So there's two parts to this. I'm hoping, we have been rambling about this for half an hour now. There's two parts that you're probably most concerned about. One is building up the endpoint, right? So in PHP, it's this. In JavaScript, it's that, right? So there's the endpoint, which is what gives you the information. And ultimately, I think the more difficult part is working with the JSON. I'd say that's the more interesting part. But they're both interesting and they both go together and they're both things that you can get hung up on. All right, last example, add a search parameter. All right, so let's say I got that search, which is always searching for Darth. I want to change it so it searches based on some dynamic criteria. So this is some combination of things that you've seen already. And this example is generally representative of how these things work. So, swappy3. Let's have a look at swappy3 and see how it's different. So swappy3 is different in that it's similar to the weather example 3, where I now have another like a input called search. So I get that value and I concatenate it onto the endpoint. Now this is weird because remember we did concatenation when we were doing this purely in JavaScript, but now we're taking this, we're starting this, we're calling the script from JavaScript, but it's a PHP script. So I got to find a way to pass it. And this is, we pass it the same way we pass everything else. Here's your root. Well, actually, that's not the root. This is the name of the file. And then I'm using the get method to pass a criteria called search. So search equals search. So if you should know what that means. That's the way that you pass information in a URL. You've done it plenty of times before. And so that's going to be available via the get method. So the difference is I had to get that value. I tacked it onto the file name. And so as always, the question mark is what separates the file name from the key value pairs that you're passing. That's a key, that's a value. I don't like that they have the same name, but they do because, I don't know, I'm weird. And then over here on swappy3, the first thing I do is I get whatever was passed, right? So, you know, when I passed it using a question mark and the key value pair, well, there's where I get it. And there's my root, there's my endpoint, and then I take my search criteria. And so search equals search. That's how that works. Notice that there's a question mark there. Just like when I sent it from JavaScript to PHP, I had a question mark separating the key value pairs that I was passing. Same is going to be true here. Right? Building an endpoint is a challenge, and it does take work. Oh, let me show you a trick I like to do. Well, I would or I wouldn't. I will do this, actually. I like to spit out my service. If I'm having trouble creating the URL, I will just echo it out. And I'll show you what that does for you. It doesn't help much. Remember, this file isn't meant to be run like this. You see that right there? So I'm getting flack. It says, what the heck is search? Because this file isn't supposed to work without something called search being passed to it. Like this. Search equals J. Right now I'm going to get everything that has a J in it. But you see this endpoint right here? If your endpoints aren't working correctly, there's a good chance it's because they're not structured correctly. And then you could take that thing and you could run that thing through something like Postman and see whether it works or not. This is an easier place to build them than just on the fly, but that is a good tip I like to teach people, is to echo out the service URL if you're having trouble with the request. All right, you can see building it up, especially if you got variables in there, is pretty difficult. This is exactly the same as it was before. And then here in the end, this is the example that spits out the ugly, like weird looking decoded URL or data. So let's run this thing. Have I opened this up yet or not? I don't know. I don't know. Did I? This is 3. Yeah, I guess so. Oh, so no, I haven't. Sorry, I'm all over the place. All right, so remember Swappy 2 where I do the name and the height? Swappy 3 is similar, but the difference is I need to give it something like Luke, and I press search, and search is going to kick off the Ajax call, and that's going to call that PHP script, and it's going to pass it that value, and I'm going to get something. Oh, that was unexpected. That's going to be fun to look at. It's because it calls Swappy 2. It needs to call Swappy 3, right? Swappy 2 didn't care about what you passed it. Swappy 3 does. And there's only one Luke. I guess there's only one Luke. I was actually kind of surprised. What about like Fett? Is there a lot of the... I don't know. I haven't actually messed around with this, but I know that the Fets are pretty cool, I think. The bounty hunters, right? You got Boba Fett, you got Jango Fett. And now maybe you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Maybe. I'm hoping. This is not a cool way to display the results, right? This is debugging style. If you wanted to make this cool, it would be your job to format it, kind of like we did here. So, I guess let's do that, because then we're almost done. This whole thing took longer than I thought it might, but also not as long as it could have taken, maybe. I do think I did a good job of streamlining this the most I could. So, if I was sitting here, I'd say, what do you want to display? I don't know. How about a... See, it's just not cool information. I don't care what color these people's eyes and colors, and I mean, they're aliens, right? Like, I don't even know. Home. So you see what I mean? There's nothing cool here, and I don't even know what that kind of format that is for a birth date. Now I will mention something here, I guess. So you see how there's these other URLs? Like, if you wanted everything about Boba Fett, that is the URL where you could fetch it from. And so sometimes when you're doing these Ajax calls to APIs, oftentimes you're going to do multiple calls. Like, you'll do one call to get this URL, and then that URL to get more information. Fine, let's just do gender. That's at least something that I understand. So we'll do name and gender, I guess. And I think a lot of these Star Wars folks are unknown for gender, I think. I haven't poked around with this a whole lot. So let's say I want to go through this and display my results in a less ridiculous format. That's going to be a for each, because this is pretty easy. I mean, if you've done it a bunch of times like I have. The thing I'm picking through is called results. It's called results for the same reason it was called results before. Results, right? Like, that's the array we care about. As key, val. Keys are going to be worthless because they're like 0 and 1. The val is the thing we want, so let's say want to echo out the val. Actually, I don't know how dot notation works with these. I think it's name, right? Oh, it's an array, so it's not going to work. I think I could curly brace into that if I was trying to be cool. Let's see if that works or not. I want to test it first. Let's put fit, search it. Oh yeah, I'm missing a line break, but it did work, so that's kind of good, I guess. And then we'll say in parentheses, this is weird looking, I know. That's going to be gender. So you see, I'm just trying to show you how to work with Ajax. You got to index into it, and the way you index into it is by looking at it, which is why that debugging statement that I had there would have been a good idea to keep in there until the very last second, because I have no idea whether it was actually called gender at this point. I think it was. It was good. Just dumb luck, but good. And so that's why I like I really like printing this out on the screen as I'm working on trying to figure out how to work with that JSON, because then I can see what things are called or not called, and I can see what's available. Just like I wish there was cool stuff like an image. Oftentimes there'll be a link to an image which you can display, or sometimes there's cooler information than others. So I'm done now. If you're tired of listening to me talk, I'm done. I showed you 6 examples: 3 Star Wars, three weathers. Some of them we did entirely in JavaScript. The other half we did some PHP for. We're going to do a lab, which is going to give you some hands-on practice with this. It's not going to be too easy because this just isn't very easy. I wanted to do one with movies, like IMDb. Seems like that'd be a really cool API because a bunch of information about films and TV shows, but they don't have an API. There is an API for movie posters, but the problem is you have to like register or sign up or maybe make a donation to get access to the movie posters. It's just cool when you can do like an image component to this. It's just weird when it's all just text like it is, but it is what it is. It's hard to find an API that's free, easily available, easy to use, and has a bunch of super awesome data. It's not uncommon to have to look at 2 different APIs and to link them together, if that makes any sense. Like in the world of weather, there's something called like geocoding, which you generally have to use a separate API for. So this is pretty complex stuff, but it's also super cool, right? Like you're nearing the point, or you're at it, where you can use other people's data and services on your website. So this is actually a pretty big step, and it's complicated for a good reason, right? I mean, you're issuing web requests to some host on the internet. You're getting that information back in JSON, which isn't the easiest thing in the world to work with. You know, how you carry out these requests, structuring your endpoints, authentication. There's a lot of things going on. So I'll end this lecture the same way I started it, and that is by saying that, so I'm going to lead you through a couple labs, and they're probably going to be pretty difficult to follow along with, but I'm not asking you to do any actual assignments with this because I don't think it's particularly reasonable to ask you to do that at the same time when you're working on your final project. If we didn't have a final project, I would make you do an assignment with this and make you learn an API on your own. But because of time constraints and because I'm expecting fully that you are spending a bunch of time working on your project of your own, I'm not going to ask you to have mastery of this. So as confusing and difficult as it is, I'm not really going to hold you terribly accountable for it. So depending on your opinion of what you think of APIs, that's good or bad news. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed this video. Examples are hard here because there are a bunch of interrelated files and endpoints and such. I hope that it got you closer to understanding what you're trying to do with APIs. Thanks for watching.